Another handy automation activity is find and replace. With this activity, you can take a text file and use it as a template and replace tokens with runtime values. Let's take a look at how to do this. Here's a simple form letter template. Let's say I want to create a form letter for each customer detailing the order. To use find and replace, I need to have placeholders for the values I want to set at runtime. So here I have three tokens. This is for the customer name, here is for the order number, and this will be for the order details. I've surrounded each one of these with characters that I know that will be easy to find and replace. To use this in automation, just open up an Automation Designer and add a find and replace activity. Now we want to preserve the template that I showed you for future use. So the first time we want to use it, we will use that template called form letter template here as the input. But the output, let's give it a different name so that that template is preserved. I'm just going to put the word out appended to the name. So now what we want to do is we want to find that first token, which was customer. And then we'll just replace it with a value. Now we want to add another find and replace. We're going to go and use that output file in both in and out, because that's the file that we're building. Now what we want to do is find the token for the order ID, and we'll give it an order value, say 200. And let's add the third item. I'm going to use the same input and output. And here we're going to look for a table, but instead of a literal value, we're going to click on File Contents. And we're actually going to go and use the contents of a CSV file. Alright, so let's see how that's going to look. Let's go ahead and run this script. Alright, and we'll click on our output. So now you can see that the value for the customer name has been replaced, the order number, and here are the details of the order. Good, so that's a very simple example. But let's look at a realistic example of something that you actually might want to use in a script. Now using finding and replace makes the most sense when using a loop data set. If you're not familiar with using a loop data set in automation, please see the video on this. But with this technique, you can take a driving query and generate detailed reports for each row of the driving query. So in this example, I'm going to set a couple of variables first. These are similar to the ones we used in our example. We want the order ID, we want a first name, and we want an email address. Now in our loop data set, the driving query is going to find a list of orders. And it will give me the order number, the first name, and the email address for the orders that I'm looking for. So now as we go down into the loop, for each row I'm going to set the value of the order into a local variable. I'm going to set the customer's first name, and I'm going to set his email address. And then I'm also going to, using a select a file, I'm going to generate the orders detail, that CSV file. And here I'm going to use a query, and I'll bind it with using that order ID. And then I'm going to export the details of that customer's order to detailorders.csv. Now we're going to use the find and replace that I showed you just a few minutes ago. So we're going to use that original form letter. We're going to look for the customer token, and I'm going to replace it with his first name. Then I'm going to look for the order ID and replace it with the order ID. And lastly, I will find the table token, and using the file contents that I just generated for that order, I will replace the details in the template. Now to actually use this, you could put it in an email. In this case, we're going to use the email address here, and instead of writing our own body, we're going to use that file as the body of the email. So this is the output text that we used. And let's take a look and see what that would look like. So here's an example of what would have been generated. So you have an email with the person's email address, their name, the number of the detail order, and the detail data. Pretty slick, huh? Find and replace enables you to customize form reports and emails.